Douglas Murray has been debating on the Israel-Hamas war for a very long time, and his overall best debate performance by far was against Cenk Uygur. And I'm going to play it here. One of the best performances I've ever seen anyone debate. He totally wipes the floor with him. Check it out.
Start with you, Douglas. I think you're back in Israel. Is that right?
Yes, I'm in Israel tonight, yeah.
Today it was a sea of other stories have come out in the last few days, which have been concerning, I think. For anyone who, like me, believes that Israel has not just a moral duty to defend itself, but has a fundamental right to do so after what happened on October the 7th. And I've said that clearly from the start. It's always been, for me, the issue of proportionality. And it seems that in the last few days, there have been a number of incidents which really question whether Israel is being precise, as it says it is, or indiscriminate. And I would cite the killing of the 3 hostages. I would cite the killing of the 2 women outside the Catholic Church. I would cite the President of the United States saying that they're using indiscriminate bombing, and so on. Do you, Douglas, notwithstanding your full throttle support of Israel, does anything that's been happening make you think Israel needs to execute this war differently?
No, and I think that most of the people who think they know how to execute this war have never executed a war. Indeed, most people who think they know how the IDF should be running this conflict have never been near a conflict. I'm in Israel tonight. I was in Gaza again yesterday. And the examples that you give, by the way, Piers, I don't see why they show any need to prosecute the war itself differently. I mean, just to take one of them, the first example you give, the absolutely tragic, awful shooting of these 3 hostages as they were coming out. But, you know, some of the spin that's been put on that in the world, apart from the glee, of course, that Israel's enemies can't help expressing, some of the spin on that is almost as if it shows the IDF is sort of so brutal that it even kills Hamas hostages who are Israeli. I just think this is another example of the international media and others just having this astounding lack of empathy for the Israeli people. Can you imagine what it was like for those soldiers who were in Gaza, knowing that at any point there are snipers, there are booby traps everywhere, people coming out of tunnels that they've built at British and American taxpayer expenses and attacking them? Can you imagine what it was like for the soldiers who, in that terrible moment, made the life-changing mistake of shooting 3 people who turned out to be Hamas hostages?
But why would they, but Douglas, on that, why would they shoot anyone who was shirtless and waving an SOS flag? I mean, why would whoever they were, whether they were Israeli hostages or whether they thought they were Palestinians, why would anyone shoot anyone who comes out like that? That's my point.
That'll be a matter for the inquiry into it. But, you know, look, it's hardly as if they'd have wanted to have done that. What this demonstrates is, in this incredibly close conflict, in a heavily built-up area, with people coming out from all sides, firing, shooting, detonating, people make mistakes. Of course they do. That's just a human reality of war, horrible as it is. I don't think it shows in any way that Israel is prosecuting this war wrongly. As for the main issue of the war is to destroy Hamas. No Israeli of left or right or center believes anymore after October the 7th they can live beside Hamas. Hamas has been given the statelet of Gaza. It was given it in 2006, voted in, then killed their fellow Palestinians in a coup, killed Fatah rivals, and they've run the Gaza for almost 18 years now. And they've produced a new generation of people whose main aim in life, it seems, according to their textbooks and their classes, is to regard Jews as enemies who should be killed. This is just an unbelievable waste, a waste of life on every side. But apart from anything else, a waste of those Palestinian lives, of children who grew up under Hamas's rule, if you can call it that, who have been indoctrinated into becoming sociopaths by a psychopathic terror organization, Hamas.
All right, Cenk, you've been listening to that. Is there anything that Douglas said that you agree with?
No, nothing.
Not even about the way Hamas has presided over Gaza in the last 18 years?
Yeah. So that's a weapon of mass distraction. It's Israel doing genocide on the Palestinians right now. And there's IDF soldiers singing and in video that the IDF has confirmed about how they're going to wipe out the seed of Amalek. That is a verse in the old Hebrew Bible that talks about exterminating Amalek. So they're talking about genocide against Palestinians. Benjamin Netanyahu has also talked about wiping out Amalek. These are open calls for genocide. What I find stunning, Douglas mentioned stunning lack of empathy. There's 20,000 dead people in Palestine right now in Gaza. Over 8,000 of them are children.
I just want to clarify, at this present moment, there's a higher number, at least according to the Gaza Health Ministry, but the point remains the same.
When 36 Israeli children were killed by Hamas, the world cried out, and I was brokenhearted over it. 36 poor kids dead in Israel. Now there's over 8,000 dead kids in Gaza. You want to talk about a stunning lack of empathy. 6,400 women slaughtered in Gaza. You want to talk about terrorism? They're dropping unguided bombs, 2,000-pound bombs. Every one of those bombs is an act of terrorism. And the stunning lack of empathy towards Palestinian lives is disgusting. But I want to be clear, it is not shared by all Israelis. The dad of one of the hostages who was killed went on Israeli television and said, "Stop killing them." And he didn't mean the hostages. He meant the Palestinians.
All right, but Cenk, let me just jump in. But before I go back to Douglas for response to this.
Let me reply to that, Piers.
Yeah, I will let you reply to that. On this issue of genocide, do you accept, though, that Hamas's whole raison d'etre when it comes to Israel is genocide? They want to eradicate Israel and kill as many Jews as they can. I mean, they've made no secret of this.
Yeah, so this is really important. So I have no sympathy for Hamas. So I am not interested in defending Hamas. I think that's nothing but a distraction. Because right now they're not fighting Hamas. They're just killing Palestinian
civilians.
Well,
they're also killing Hamas terrorists. They are. I mean, they're killing thousands of them.
Barely. No, wait a minute. Barely. But let's go to your main point, okay? So the main point is, well, Hamas threatens X, Y, and Z and has killed 1,200 people on October 7th. So that is why we have to all worry about what Hamas might do in regards to trying to... Hold on, let me finish the point. Let me finish the point. At what they might do if they had infinite power, the kind of power that Israel has. Meanwhile, Israel is actually doing the genocide, is actually preventing a Palestinian state and saying you are not allowed to exist, and if you dare try to exist, we'll kill 20,000 of your children and women.
All right, Douglas.
And now the verbal mauling begins. Watch Douglas Murray absolutely wreck Cenk Uygur. Check it out.
Respond to that.
Several things. First of all, anyone who uses the term genocide in this context simply doesn't know what they're talking about, or is a malevolent actor. I don't know if Mr. Uygur's traveled at all in his life, how far he's traveled, how many conflicts he's seen, but I'd have guessed none. And you clearly know nothing about this particular conflict, and you've obviously seen none of it. The genocide that you describe is such a smear and a libel against the Jewish state. If Israel wanted to commit genocide, I'm sure it could, but it doesn't. It doesn't remotely want to. And people like you and other pro-Palestinian propagandists have spent years claiming that Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza. By the way, the weirdest thing about this claim is that the population of the Gaza has grown by 1 million in the last 15 or so years. So if Israel was trying to carry out a genocide, it's either the worst perpetrator of genocide ever or uniquely poor at performing that task. None of the stats support that ridiculous claim. And it's such a weird smear and a libel of Israel. Secondly, of course, you've just rattled off Hamas figures, as every one of your kind always does. Thirdly, you said that the world cried, you said that the people like you who cover for the Palestinian extremists. Thirdly, you said that the world cried out for the 36 Israeli dead children. No, they didn't. And you know that very well. You know that very well. If you put up a poster to a missing dog in any Western city, that poster stays up. In city after city in America, posters of abducted Jewish children, including a 10-month-old baby, were put up and were ripped down by people who have been indoctrinated into hate of Jews. Nobody would rip down the poster of a missing dog, but from Dublin to Berkeley, they ripped down posters of abducted Jewish children. So no, I don't think there was
Douglas,
very much care for that around the world.
Let me put this to you, Douglas.
Let me make two other very quick points. Firstly, you said what Hamas might do, as if it was some kind of hypothetical. Hamas showed what they do, what they want to do. It showed it on October the 7th, and its leadership, as I'm sure you very well know, said that they would like to repeat that again and again until they have got rid of every Jew. So, I don't know. I would trust Hamas's word on that rather than your interpretation of what you think they mean when they say that, and your generous interpretation of what you think that means. And finally, as for preventing a Palestinian state, it is nonsense that the Israelis have prevented a Palestinian state. They gave the Gazans a Palestinian state in 2005. They gave them a Palestinian state in 2005 when every Jewish person was ripped from their homes in the Gaza by IDF soldiers. And the Palestinian people were given a state. And what did they do? They voted in Hamas, who then killed their fellow Palestinians, never had another election, and used all the billions of dollars of taxpayer funds from the US, UK, and Europe to build terror tunnels and to enrich themselves so they could live the life of luxury in Qatar. Again and again, the reason there is not a Palestinian state is because the Palestinian leadership doesn't want one.
Okay, Douglas,
didn't want one in 1947, right, it preferred war, and it doesn't want one now.
Douglas, let me put one point to you raised by Queen Rania of Jordan in a new piece for, I think it was the Washington Post. In just over 2 months, she said, Israel's turned Gaza into a hellscape. At least 8,000 children have died, more than the death tolls of Pearl Harbor, September the 11th, and Hurricane Katrina combined. These are gigantic and horrendous numbers of children being killed. Do you not have any qualms about the number of children being killed? I mean, does it not suggest that Israel...
I want to hear Queen Rania talking about this as much as I want to hear Queen Camilla or Meghan Markle. I mean, it's pathetic. Queen Rania is holding on to her own position in Jordan. The only piece of advice she has for anyone is how to marry a king. Queen Rania herself is just playing a very nasty political game. If she cared at all, and I would pose this to all the states in the region, if Jordan cared at all for the Palestinian people, they would take them in.
All right,
they would take them in.
They
don't want them. If the Egyptians wanted them, they'd take them in, but they don't. Do you know why? Because every country that takes in the Palestinians gets terror. It happened in Egypt, it happened in Jordan, it happened in Syria, it happened in Lebanon, it happened in Tunisia, on and on. That's why these people don't really care about their fellow Muslims. They just care about hating Jews.
All right, Cenk, your response.
Truer words were never spoken there. That was just 7 minutes of pure brilliance from Douglas Murray. That last point about Palestinians, they aren't being accepted by their Muslim so-called brothers that care so much about Palestine. Well, if you care so much about these Palestinians, then why don't you take them in? Why have they never, offered to take any of these Palestinian refugees? Because they only use Palestinians as a sort of distraction in order to attack Israel. So they use Palestinians almost as their pawns while they stay behind the line of fire and get to sort of just sacrifice them to terror.
Yeah, so you asked if he cared about 8,000 dead babies, and his answer was no. Queen Rania bothers me, so complete non-answer, because he doesn't care. He doesn't think that Palestinians' lives are worth anything. He just called them all terrorists.
Well, it's nice you can put that
and this is what they always do.
There you go.
So hold on, I let you talk for a long time, so why don't you shut up for a second? So we've got all of these dead babies. We've got all of these dead babies that this monster doesn't care about. He says keep bombing them. A former intelligence officer said in the Israeli press they're using AI in a program called The Gospel, where he said it's basically a mass assassination factory. And we could all see it with our own eyes. And you could do all the propaganda you want. No one believes your nonsense. We see all the dead women. We see all the dead children. Now Israel has killed 20 times the number of civilians that Hamas killed. So would I want Hamas in charge of Israel? Never, never. I don't trust them. and I don't believe that they would be benign. So all of this propaganda about, people don't mind Hamas. No, we mind Hamas. We terribly what happened on October 7th. And I'm now showing you different Israelis that have said that it's a problem. And I want peace and security for both Israel and Palestine.
This is BS. On October 7th, he said Hamas is very stupid for doing this, basically saying that he cares more about the Israeli response, meaning look what they're about to do to the Palestinians. He had zero sympathy for the Jews. If you look at his opening show, he said Hamas is very stupid for doing this. He didn't call them evil. He called them stupid because he, again, believes that Palestinian lives are way more important than Israeli ones. He had no crazy condemnation of Hamas on October 7th. And if he did, he didn't mean it. So Cenk Uygur is 100% a Hamas apologist, 100%.
And this does not get Israel any peace or security. But when you ask the other side, do you mind tens of thousands of civilians that have been murdered, incinerated alive, body parts picked out of rubble, little babies killed over and over again in what is even the Israeli prime minister is referring to as Amalek, meaning an extermination of the Palestinian people. And I must clarify the difference between a genocide and a Holocaust. A genocide is when you target a specific people and kill a lot of civilians. Srebrenica, where 6,000 people were killed, was considered a genocide. So it doesn't mean you try to murder every single person in that
let me ask
race.
you.
That is a Holocaust.
Okay,
let me reply.
Wait, one second. Before I go to Douglas, Cenk, one question. You want to get rid of Hamas too, as does Douglas, as do I. If you don't do it the way that Israel is currently doing it, given that they live amongst the population, how else do you do it?
Yeah, there's an excellent way to do it, and there's the right way to do it. So let me explain. So war, this guy talks about, I love war. I go to all the conflict zones. So by watching it and rooting on for more death, I know something about conflict. You know nothing. So here's what reality is. War gets you more war, but peace actually works. So when Israel did a peace deal with Egypt, not only were the Egyptians safe, but the Israelis became safer. That peace deal has held for decade after decade. So how do you do a peace deal in this case? What you do is you do the two-state solution now, and you do it with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank.
So what he's saying is, after October 7th, Israel should say, yeah, even though these savages murdered our children, now we're going to give them a state so that they can be closer to us and so that they can do it again. And so that we're rewarding terror. So that's his solution. Brilliant. The same people that are avowed to your destruction, give them a state.
And if you then have a Palestinian state, the Palestinian Authority would have the credibility to drive out Hamas from Gaza. That is a realistic plan for both peace, security for Israel and the Palestinians, and driving out Hamas. The idea that you're going to kill 20,000 more civilians, 200,000 more civilians in Gaza, and it's going to drive out Hamas is insanity.
Let me answer that.
Let Douglas respond to that.
First of all, I mean, your other guest, I mean, I don't know what kind of a creature he is. He's a kind of low-grade thug, as far as I can see. He's listened to nothing I've said.
Yeah, I know, because I'm Muslim. That's what you call all Muslims.
I'll tell you. No, it's not that at all. It's not that at all. I just think that you're just a very low-rent racist. But anyway, let me just get on to it. You say, first of all, I don't care about the death of Palestinian children. Yes, I do care. I care very deeply about it. But I also know that the responsibility for their deaths lies on Hamas, which has misgoverned their society for the last 16 years and now has been leading the country into being in a war with Israel. So yes, it's on Hamas, this. As for seeing wars, by the way, I just mentioned about seeing wars because as far as I can see, you're very ill-traveled as well as rather ill-lettered and ill-spoken. And I mention that I cover wars and go to wars because I happen to think myself that it's worth seeing things with your own eyes, including things that you don't particularly like, but you report the truth. I don't know if you ever even leave your own bedroom. And I can tell already that you don't because you've already said something that demonstrates you know nothing about this conflict. You have just demonstrated it in the following terms. You said that this is why we need to push for a two-state solution and give legitimacy to the Palestinian Authority. I'll tell you something you don't know because I guess you spent no time in the West Bank, have you? I'll tell you something you probably don't know. The The Palestinian Authority, Fatah, celebrated the 7th of October massacres. I'll give you another fact which demonstrates you know nothing about this and clearly haven't ever visited any Palestinians in the West Bank as I have. If there was an election tomorrow in the West Bank, the reason why there isn't one is because if there was an election tomorrow in the West Bank, Hamas would win. So your idea of a two-state solution, I'm afraid you are so out of date and you really should leave your bedroom. Because in this region, nobody thinks that there is a two-state solution on the table because there is not a viable negotiating partner. But I just want to make one other main point. You have gone on and on tonight, throwing accusations out against the Jewish state, against me. It's the sort of thing you do. I know you're a sort of online pugilist and think you can run for office, and good luck with that. But I'd just like to point out that you only really get animated if the Jews are involved. And I can tell that for the following reason. I mean, your surname's Uygur, isn't it? 1 million Uyghur Muslims in China have been put in concentration camps in the last decade. And people of your ilk never really care about that, do you? Because it's not the Jews doing it, it's the Chinese Communist Party. At the moment, 1 million people who are in Pakistan at the moment, who are your fellow Muslims and who happen to be Afghan, and I don't think you care about them, do you? 1 million Afghans are currently being forcibly deported from Pakistan to Afghanistan. You don't care about that. You're not riled up about that. You're not riled up about what the Janjaweed are currently doing in Sudan, where thousands and thousands of people are being attacked by the Islamist militia there. You don't care about any of that. You get exercised and you rile up what little base you have of malcontents because you're riled up when the Jews do anything.
All right,
it's
Cenk.
perfectly obvious.
Okay, Cenk, your response.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, my last name is Uygur. We're named after the Uyghur Turks in China. And have we talked about that on the Young Turks?
Spoken up then.
Yes.
Wow. Absolute mic drop from Douglas Murray there. I don't think that there's any reason to show the rest. He probably just goes on and calls him a racist. I actually watched it. There was no points made. And Douglas Murray killed it with this debate against Cenk Uygur. I don't even know how Cenk Uygur can debate after getting destroyed so thoroughly. And thank you, Douglas Murray, for keeping up for fighting for Israel. For more, subscribe to this channel. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. That's buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. Thank you, and have a good one.